Why did it have to end like this? I can't bear this pain.
Grayson Hale checked his watch again. 6:43 p.m. He had no idea why he'd agreed to this. His sister had begged him to go. Just one blind date, Gray. You need to talk to someone who isn't a board member or an investor. He had caved only to stop her relentless calls. Now he sat at a small cafe on Main Street in the sleepy Vermont town he'd left years ago. A place that still smelled of rain-soaked pine and roasted coffee. It was too warm inside, the chatter too close. The cafe's wooden beams, mismatched chairs, and shelves of used books felt like an alien world compared to the sleek glass and steel offices he called home. He had promised himself he'd give this exactly 15 minutes, then he could leave with a polite smile and a clear conscience. When the door opened, he barely looked up. A gust of cold air slipped in, followed by a woman's quiet voice. "Grayson Hale?" He turned. She stood by his table, a touch out of breath, blonde hair twisted loosely into a soft bun, a few curls falling against her cheek. Her dress was a simple floral pattern, not designer, but graceful. Her eyes were light blue, alert yet gentle. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said. "The roads are terrible tonight." "It's all right," Grayson replied, rising automatically. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Please." She smiled and sat, setting her small purse beside her. "Thank you for waiting. I almost thought you'd leave." "I considered it," he admitted dryly. Her laugh was low, genuine, and somehow disarmed him. They ordered black coffee for him, chamomile tea for her, and for a few minutes, the conversation skimmed the surface. Work. Weather. How small the town still felt. She didn't mention his company, didn't ask about the magazine profiles or Forbes lists. It was oddly refreshing. Just as he began to relax, she leaned forward slightly, studying him. "You don't remember me, do you?" Grayson blinked. "I'm sorry?" A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "You saved me once, Grayson, when I was just a hungry kid hiding behind the book stacks." The words hit him like a soft but sudden blow. His fingers stilled around the coffee cup. Saved her? A hungry kid? Book stacks? He searched her face, the curve of her smile, the glimmer of memory that refused to form. Nothing clear, just a flicker, a whisper of a moment buried somewhere deep. He started, but the words fell away. Across from him, the blonde woman only smiled a little wider, her blue eyes steady. Grayson didn't remember, but something in her tone, in the quiet certainty of it, pressed against a locked place in his mind, a place he wasn't sure he wanted to open. Grayson stared at her, unsure how to respond. Across the table, the woman, Tessa, held his gaze with calm confidence, as if she had expected his confusion. She took a slow sip of her tea, letting the silence linger. "I'm sorry," he said finally, voice low. "I really don't remember." "I didn't think you would," she replied gently, setting her cup down. "You were a teenager. I was a scrawny little girl in hand-me-downs. You had no reason to notice me." Grayson leaned back slightly, frowning. "And yet you're here." Tessa gave a small shrug, almost playful. "I figured if fate was bold enough to toss us into a blind date together, I should at least say thank you properly." He searched her expression. She didn't seem to be toying with him. No hint of manipulation, no attempt to make him feel guilty. Just honesty. A rare thing in his world. The server returned with their dinner orders. He had defaulted to the chef's special, some kind of rosemary chicken, while she chose the butternut squash soup and a side salad. Simple, but comforting. As they began to eat, Grayson asked, "So, what do you do now, when you're not catching people off guard on blind dates?" Tessa smiled. "I work part-time as a librarian, the public library in town." He raised an eyebrow. "Still hiding behind the book stacks, then?" "Only during story time," she teased, then added, "It's mostly so I can spend more time with my daughter." "You have a daughter?" he asked, genuinely surprised. "Lila," she said with a warm smile. "She's 4, loves ballet, pink dresses, and dinosaur picture books." Grayson let out a short laugh. "Sounds like a handful." "She is," Tessa nodded, her smile turning soft, proud. "But she's the best part of my life." He found himself curious. "Where's your husband?" Her gaze flicked down for a brief second. There never really was one. It's just been me and Lila from the beginning. He nodded, respectful of her boundaries. That must be hard. Tessa gave a light shrug. Sometimes, but this town makes it easier. People look out for each other. Mostly. Grayson's eyes drifted around the room. It's changed a little, but not much. You used to live here, didn't you? She asked. He hesitated. Yeah, a long time ago. My family moved away when I was 15. What happened? He met her eyes, debating. Then, quietly, my father's business collapsed. We lost everything. My mom passed away a few months after we left. Tessa's expression softened. I'm sorry. He nodded once. It's fine. It was a long time ago. There was a pause. Then she asked, Do you remember the library at all? Barely, he admitted. I used to stop there after school. It was quiet, peaceful. You brought a sandwich and orange juice every day, she said. He looked at her, startled. I remember, she continued, her voice a little quieter now. I used to sit near the children's section and pretend I was reading, but mostly I was just trying not to be hungry. One day, you left your lunch on the table and walked away. You didn't say a word. I waited 10 minutes before touching it because I thought maybe it was a mistake. It wasn't, he said automatically, surprising even himself. She smiled. I figured that out eventually. And after that, every few days, you'd leave your lunch in the same spot. No note, no conversation, just kindness. Grayson's jaw tightened, emotions he could not name stirring behind his ribs. I never knew your name back then, she added. Not until tonight. He sat in stunned silence, the soup in front of him forgotten. A blurry image flickered in his memory, his hands setting down a brown paper bag next to a silent small girl with tangled blonde hair. He had not thought about that in years. Maybe ever. I didn't think anyone noticed, he said quietly. I did, Tessa replied. And I never forgot. Grayson looked at her, truly looked at her, not as a date, not as a stranger, but as someone tied to a version of himself he had long buried. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel like Grayson Hale, CEO. He just felt human. The next morning, Grayson sat at his hotel desk, staring at the untouched cup of coffee growing cold beside his laptop. He had told himself he was leaving town by noon. Meetings awaited him in Boston, the city skyline always ready to swallow him back into its steel rhythm. But something about last night lingered. Tessa's voice, her story, the way her words had pulled a forgotten part of him back into focus. He told himself it was curiosity, that was all. By early afternoon he found himself parking across from the public library. The building was small, brick-faced, with ivy curling around the windows. It looked exactly as he remembered it, and somehow, nothing like it at all. He hesitated at the entrance, then pushed the door open. The warmth hit first, followed by the scent of old paper and vanilla-scented disinfectant. Children's laughter echoed softly from the far corner. He stepped inside and nearly laughed. The place was more chaotic than he'd expected. In the children's section, tucked between shelves, painted like trees, a small group of toddlers and preschoolers were sitting on mushroom-shaped cushions, listening to a young woman read from a picture book. And right in the center, twirling slowly in a pink dress and ballet slippers, was a little girl. She spun with arms overhead, hair in a tiny bun, completely absorbed in her imaginary performance. Grayson blinked. That had to be her. Lila. He stood there for a moment, unsure if he should interrupt, but before he could decide, the girl spotted him. She stopped mid-twirl, tilted her head, and marched right over. You? She said matter-of-factly, pointing a tiny finger up at him. Are you Mom's friend from the date? Grayson's mouth opened, and nothing came out. Every head in the reading circle turned. Even the librarian glanced up from her book with raised eyebrows. Tessa appeared from behind a nearby shelf, clearly having overheard. Lila, she hissed, trying not to laugh. Let's not shout our personal business across the whole library. Grayson, thoroughly embarrassed, managed a sheepish smile. I knew it, Lila said triumphantly, ignoring her mother's gentle scolding. You're the man from the date. The one with the serious face. Grayson chuckled. Serious face, huh? Tessa approached, hands full of children's books. She looked amused. I told her a little about you, she admitted, shooting Lila a look that was more playful than reprimanding. Apparently, I may have described you as intense. You said he looked like a statue with a tie, Lila announced proudly. Grayson burst out laughing. Well, that's one I haven't heard before. Tessa shrugged with a smirk. She's brutally honest. Gets it from her grandmother. Lila leaned in closer, studying his face with the unfiltered curiosity only a child could get away with. Then she whispered, not quietly at all, "Mr. Grayson, you're not scary at all, like Mom said." Grayson froze. Tessa's eyes widened. "Lila." But he raised a hand gently. "It's okay." Something in his chest cracked open just a little. That one sentence, spoken in a child's voice, completely sincere, cut through more layers than a dozen boardroom compliments ever had. "I promise, I'm not scary," he told her softly. "I just forget how to smile sometimes." Lila nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "You should practice. Smiling makes your eyebrows go up. It's better." He laughed again, his shoulders loosening more than he realized. Tessa gave him a long, warm look. "What brings you here, anyway?" He cleared his throat, only half lying. "I was in the area." "You came to a library in a town you haven't visited in over 10 years, just to be in the area?" He gave her a look. "Maybe I was curious." "About to me or about her ballet routine?" she asked, nodding toward Lila, who had already returned to her pirouettes among the bookshelves. "Both," he admitted. They stood side by side, watching the little girl spin and giggle, the light catching in her pink tulle skirt. And for the first time since he had returned, Grayson did not feel like a stranger in this town. He just felt seen. Grayson showed up at Tessa's door just after 5, holding a brightly illustrated book in one hand. "Lila dropped this," he said as soon as she opened the door. She was too busy twirling through the non-fiction aisle. Tessa blinked, then smiled. "Oh no, not dancing dinosaurs. She's been asking for that one for days." He handed it over. "I figured it might be important." She laughed softly. "You figured right. Want to come in for a minute?" Grayson hesitated, then nodded. The house was small and older, but tidy and warm. Faded wallpaper, framed drawings clearly made by little hands, the faint smell of cinnamon and crayons lingering in the air. It was the kind of home built slowly, with care, not money. He followed her into the living room as she set the book on the coffee table. Lila's tiny shoes were neatly lined up by the door, her pink ballet bag resting nearby. "Lila's with the neighbor," Tessa explained. "They're making cookies. I only agreed because she promised not to touch the oven." "Smart mom. I've learned to pick my battles." As Grayson glanced around, his eye caught something on the dining table, a stack of mail. A pale yellow envelope sat half open on top. He was not trying to snoop, but the bold letters across the top were hard to miss. Final notice. Foreclosure warning. Tessa noticed his pause. Her smile faltered. She crossed the room quickly, scooping up the papers and pressing them against her chest. "It's nothing," she said too quickly. Grayson turned to her. "Tessa, it's just a delay in payments. I'll work it out." Her tone was firm, almost defensive. "I didn't ask you here to talk about my bills." "I didn't think you did," he said gently, "but I'd like to help." She shook her head. "No, that's not why I invited you in. I know. I also know the library's barely getting by. I've seen it." He took a step closer. "What if we worked on something together? I could fund a reading and education program through the library. Something permanent. We could hire more staff, expand the kids section, host events." Tessa's expression shut down before he could finish. "Grayson," she said quietly, "I don't want to be your charity." He blinked, stunned. "That's not what this is." "It might not feel that way to you," she replied, her voice calm but steady. "But to me, that's exactly what it feels like." He ran a hand through his hair. "Tessa, I'm offering to invest. This isn't about pity." "Easy for you to say," she said, arms folding. "You walk in, see a foreclosure notice, and suddenly you're ready to fix it all like it's just another business problem. But this isn't business. This is my life. I know that. Do you? She asked softly. Because I've spent years building this life, this home, for Lila, without help. And I don't want the first person who steps in to fix things just because he can afford to. Grayson felt the sting behind her words. Not anger, just disappointment, and a wall rising between them. I didn't mean to offend you. Tessa's expression softened slightly, but her eyes stayed guarded. I know, and I appreciate that you care. But this town has seen its share of rich men swoop in and save things. They always leave, and they usually take something with them. He looked down, the weight of unspoken history pressing between them. After a long silence, he said, I didn't come to take anything from you. I know, she whispered. But she did not say more, and he did not stay long after that. As he stepped out into the cool twilight, the book still fresh in his memory, so was the look in her eyes, pride, fear, and something else he could not name. He had offered help, not charity. But maybe, in her world, there was no difference. It was nearly midnight when Grayson's phone rang. He almost did not answer. He had just returned from a long investor dinner in Burlington and was about to shut down for the night. But when he saw the caller ID, M. Jameson, Tessa's neighbor's number, he picked up immediately. Mr. Hale? The woman's voice was strained. I didn't know who else to call. Lila's very sick. Tessa's trying to drive her to the hospital, but her car wouldn't start. She's panicking. And I'm on my way, Grayson said before she could finish. He did not change, just grabbed his keys and coat and was out the door in seconds. The drive from his lakeside hotel to the edge of town took nearly 2 hours, the roads slick with freezing rain. He kept one hand tight on the wheel and the other clenched around his phone, though no one was calling back. His mind spun with images, Lila curled up in her pink dress, Tessa's calm cracking, her worry deeper than pride could hide. When he finally pulled up to Tessa's darkened street, she was sitting on the porch steps in a sweatshirt and leggings, cradling Lila in her lap. The little girl was burning with fever, her face flushed, her arms limp around her mother's neck. Without a word, Grayson got out, opened the passenger door, and held out his arms. Tessa hesitated for a second, then she handed Lila over. She just started burning up, she whispered, voice breaking. I didn't know what else to do. We're going to take care of her, Grayson said quietly. He drove them to St. Vincent's Medical Center, the only hospital in the region equipped for pediatric emergencies. He gave no last name, no explanation of who he was, just handed over his credit card and asked for the best available care. Tessa stayed with the nurses while Lila was checked in. Grayson remained in the waiting room, pacing, buying snacks he did not eat, flipping through magazines he did not see. When Tessa returned, eyes red but steadier, he handed her a cup of water. She's stable, she said. They gave her fluids, said it was a strong flu. If the fever drops in a few hours, we can take her home. Grayson exhaled, slowly. Thank God. Tessa sat beside him, hands trembling slightly in her lap. I can't believe this is happening, she murmured. I couldn't even afford the intake fee. If you hadn't. You don't have to thank me, he interrupted.